What comprises art, much less fine art, rather than crude is a perennial question, is somewhat stilted one perhaps for snobs, exclusively limiting the term fine art to political contributors adept at sliding payola under the table from offshore banks and so forth. When I was in college, I took an independent study philosophy course on aesthetics that eventually morphed into the philosophy of art after I made a trip to the Louvre and the Parthenon to look things over. People have asked if art is symbolic and representational, one or the other, or both at one time or another. Art is divided into classes of those comprising graven images of real or imagined persons or creatures, and those that are representational, yet not necessarily of animate objects, including people, and those that aren't, as in certain Islamic art. In Oregon, the Portland Art Museum had an unusual art piece set like a table that was a lifelike statue of a naked man named the Gaul. It would have been representational art, representing a human, obviously, as a model airplane or a carving of a bear might represent an airplane or an actual bear. De Gaulle was a graven image or not, depending upon one being a human, a sociopath, or cynic perhaps, and to what degree one worshipped human beings as a kind of center of the universe, mankind as a measure of all things, instead of one with God, or at least other beings of equal stature in a hierarchy of man and his place in the phenomenal universe. I learned that just 1% of the marble statues carved in ancient Greece, Attic Greece, by sculptors such as Phidias and of Roman statuary, too, survived the ravages of historical recycling into use in building, or were lost to history through other causes, not excluding iconoclasm and artillery. I would guess in their day those statues were painted with lifelike colors and would have been a remarkable sight. Art can be symbolic and representational simultaneously, as might Rodin's sculpture, the thinker, represent a human in a posture of thought, yet also symbolize the characteristic of being human, differentiating humans from animals. If one encountered the thinker in an extraterrestrial art museum with sculptures of many sorts of animals, one might guess that humans can think abstractions and regard them as slow and stupid, pondering simple things before moving as deliberately as a sea cucumber might, if it could think, or a woodchuck would, if it wanted to calculate quantities before chucking wood. One learns from history that artisans were craftsmen. Sculptors and painters of the Renaissance often were one and the same, with artists like Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci working in both fields. We learned that youths skilled in sketching were apprenticed to the building trades and craftworks, including painting. It showed exceptional ability. They were trained with the materials for what classically is regarded as artistic painting. Great murals, such as covered the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, were made, yet there were probably thousands of lesser quality wall coverings in villas by sundry artists that preponderantly didn't survive. Numerous other artisans' work, such as tile, floor murals, and tapestry, utilized intercraft skills. Over time, the term art became detached from its initial meaning, grounded in building trades and decorating surfaces that were aesthetically satisfying, and became an eponym for things in themselves that were decorative, yet made with skill for an aesthetic thing for itself. Portrait, landscape, and historical paintings were regarded as art. Opera, too, became regarded as of the arts because it combined painting scenes, costumes, plays, and music together in a superfluous production. Art had the quality of being fundamentally superfluous and non-functional in comparison to practical skills, like farming, medicine, soldiering, engineering, or educating others with ideas of best ways to think. Philosophy. Apologists have countless times defended the superfluity of art by saying that mankind needs music, paintings, and other distractions for relief from the mundane, etc. There are basic arts, though, that require no defense, such as the art of building a fire below zero or sailing a boat through a storm that may save one's life, if only in the temporal. I believe that an expanded, practical paradigm for the meaning of art formed the core of the expansion of the range of the word art. The art of peace is more valued than the art of war in its season. Modern art changed the idea of what art is. Jackson Pollock's splattered paint on canvas exemplified the idea of aesthetically pleasing images without forms. French Impressionists and other modernist painters had changed the nature of presenting images with new techniques, and Cubists such as Pablo Picasso presented the subjectivity of perception and ideas of others externally. If Picasso had known Freud well, the result might have been some odd collage of Jungian archetypes in a macabre El Greco dreamscape infused with special relativity. With the evolution of art to formlessness as well as forms, and to atoms, ideas, and nominalism lapping on the shoreline of universals, art returned to its roots as a general term for structured aesthetic presentations and building trades. The term art wasn't limited to aesthetic surfaces for the eyes. It expanded to include architecture like that of Antonio Gaudi's La Sagrada Familia and Pei's Glass Pyramid at the Louvre, and etchings like Malcolm Escher's paradoxical images of architecture and landscapes. Like the word professional, art became universally applied to describe any sort of activity well done, from cake decorating to reasoning. Is fiction writing an art? Language has two basic elements, the syntagmatic and paradigmatic axes. structure and meaning. Like prosaic constructions, in contrast to artistic ordinary language, may be skillfully worked to an artistic level of expression. I read a book on classical predicated propositional and term logic several times, named The Art of Reasoning, Zen, The Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. It was a famous written work toward the end of the 20th century. Hermann Hesse Steppenwolf probably tipped the scales toward Hesse being awarded a Nobel Prize for literature. Fiction writing is art in fact and perceptible. In great works such as Stendhal's The Red and the Black, or in Solzhenitsyn's August 1914. Words are an art form capable of expressing ideas in themselves rather than representationally, although words have a synthetic, nominalist, realist character necessarily interpreted in part subjectively. With Jean-Paul Sartre's The Condemned of Altoona, one experiences one sees where captives are kept awaiting execution and discovers their thought. Not only in fiction is art and writing present. It is found in nonfiction works such as Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago. Writers may work on their writing project for a lifetime and never capture the aesthetics or ideas they wish to convey in the form they want. I wrote 5 novels and 5 books of poetry while unemployed and unable to find work for others, without being satisfied that I couldn't have done much better. It is somewhat amusing that several sectors of society, including government, do not recognize writing for oneself rather than working for an industry or employer doing technical writing as work or an occupation. Some states and alumni associations do not recognize writer as an occupation or an art. All of that creative activity, editing, and developing structure for contemporary electronic publishing is what? Unskilled idleness? If Shakespeare's plays were not fine art, would they at least be a sort of granular art as the art of war might be regarded? Should writers consider themselves to be not artists or even workers if they don't turn out products like War and Peace or Brothers Karamazov up to a government standard Book of the Month club? Writers could alternatively regard themselves as actors in real life, like Vladimir and Estragon playing in Waiting for Godot, trying to rhyme like broadcast journalists and politicians and perform to keep an administration's minions happy with very fine art. The art of boxing and of counterpunching would be an art if Floyd Mayweather Jr. was using it, yet not so if a less skilled fighter was putting up a defense. If Carmelo Anthony or Kobe Bryant were shooting jump shots, that might be an art, yet not Wilt Chamberlain shooting free throws as line drives in bouncing off the hoop. The art of constructing a universe from a concentrated and undifferentiated mystic field that expands in predetermined ways inclusive of an element of uncertainty when observed from within the universe seems quite artful, yet in retrospect, Einstein's discovery of special and general relativity seemed artful and aesthetically satisfying, even if not the dictum de omni for every possible configuration of fields, waves, or pluralism that could ever arise in cosmological theories or observations within mathematics or without. Some people need be satisfied with the art of cooking and basic elements such as meat and potatoes, as much as delicate novelties concocted by a French chef infusing carbohydrates and sweets with special sauces into game birds. Fishing and hunting have elements of art, yet so do optimal social designs for progress, prosperity, and environmental health when they escape from the jaws of censorship into the body politic. In the modern world, mystics and romantics still see art in nature, in particular in sunsets, mountains, flowers caressed by a breeze, and in life itself. Philosophers and experimentalists advanced knowledge of design, and so an art of design arose as if Gregory Mendel learned to plant genetics, worked with Ludwig van Beethoven to synthetically combine variations of abstract structures, not to solve every encoded natural construction from sound to light, and further to formalize heterodox recombination of Aristotelian substances as genetic dialectics in all positive compositions. The art of God, in presenting nature, brought man's place within it to a sentient plane. Evolving to sufficient reason, mankind was allowed a coefficient in law to draw human society toward ordered moral structure that would bring the beings growing from the ground to becoming toward himself, with the Lord Jesus Christ providing the moral and ethical genius to overcome the original sin of implicit thermodynamic drive to obtain energy implicit in creatures of the temporal universe. Mankind need be born again, beyond the drives of thermodynamics spiritually, through the saving grace of the Lord. Modern art flowed into reason and overlapping arts of reason and design. Multidimensional aesthetics could be used by mathematicians as solutions to puzzles and tests of modal logic universes. Physical scientists might design and actualize quantum splices and superpositions of structures from photons to quarks and fields, sustaining them as long-term entangled virtual particulate emanations of fields. Yet fine arts could take many forms. It might be